Hello and welcome to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy,
And I'm Claire.
and we're here to talk about some of the disturbing things that go on in the world, past and present. We feel like not knowing doesn't mean the crazy doesn't exist.
So we're going to scar you with the knowing.
Enjoy.
So who we talk about today?
Today, we're going to talk about Steven Timothy Judy, who lived in the 70s in Indiana.
Woo!
We're going to jump right in with both feet, because you know the 70s in Indiana, it's a perfect time frame for some disasters.
Some kidnapping, some raping, and some murdering.
Because I really don't know what was going on in Indiana in the 70s, but there's been nothing good that comes out of it.
There really hasn't.
They should have just fenced it off. There's your island. Let's just dig a moat around it.
Put some gators in there. That way they can dispose of all them their bodies they seem to be accumulating.
You know the gators come out of the water, right?
Not with the fence.
Then put sharks.
Sure, sharks. Be like the Everglades, we can put sharks and gators. Anyway, continue.
So Stephen was born May 24th, 1956 to Myrtle and Vernon Judy. Now, Vernon would have a history of being arrested for assaulting Myrtle. Got that? Ma and Pa are whacking each other. More paw than maw, but not a good environment. One time Vernon came home to find his wife cheating on him and would respond by killing the family dog.
What?
Yes.
What'd the dog do?
That's what I was like. Unless she was doing the
Unless
dog,
she was cheating with the dog.
understand.
Yeah.
I don't understand the link. Although I also thought of it, maybe he's like, you know, the ladies who will have like I don't know what kind of dog it was, but like a favorite dog. And maybe the dog was yapping. So he just like, and it was her dog kind of thing. Still was fucked up. And Stephen would witness this. Stephen would also claim a few times that his mom would pull a gun on his dad, which understandably so if she's getting beat by him, that I don't blame her for pulling a gun.
You can't see my face. You can't see my face, but I just, I would pull a gun as well. If I thought you were about to beat me, actually, I'd probably leave you, but, you know, I get it. Kill my dog, beat me, deserve it.
Mm-hmm. You wouldn't be coming back through the door, is what I would say. I would only do it the one time door. Because I would be, when my eyeballs are closed, they better not set foot, or not foot, that's the wrong word, but they must not lay eyes on you again, to be several times. Anyway, so Stephen would also claim, later on that is, that he never had a birthday party and they never celebrated Christmas. I think they were too swept up in all the beatings that I don't know if they just plumb forgot. But
were they alcoholics, do you know?
The dad was. So he would also say his childhood, he would remember frequently moving. His father would be in and out of jail over 70 times.
Oh, gosh.
While his mother had different men in her bed coming and going. There were drugs, alcohol, violence, pornography all over the place. Scrapes with the law were normal. That it's just like not an environment to raise a decent human being at all.
No.
Now, this one was just weird. I don't have a time frame as much as I tried. But when Stephen's father eventually just disappears and never comes back, he might be dead. I don't know. But he eventually abandons the family. His mother remarries, but then separates from her second husband, and she goes to Florida. It doesn't say they go to Florida, so I don't know if she just went there for a trip. But second husband follows her there. They get in an argument, and she shoots him. He lives, but they later remarry. And I was like, what?
Yeah, it's Florida. It's kind of like Vegas. What happens in Florida stays in Florida.
Well, I looked up from that and I was like, if Dave and I ever got into an argument and he shot me, I wouldn't be like, oh, we just rekindled that love. Like, no.
Yeah, no, that'd be a deal breaker for me. But I'm going to guess that she's got some PTSD from the abuse from the first one, that it was like that camel or the straw that broke the camel's back kind of scenario of it all mushed together, all the drama from the first mixed with the second, unless she popped off the first one and thought she'd get away with it the second time, only this one lived.
Maybe,
you never know. It could go either way. I told you, Cletus, to put them dishes in the dishwasher.
I stand by. Dave shoots me. We're not getting back together. I consider that.
Hell
no. No, you go your way, I'll go mine. But by the time Steven is 10, he starts pursuing high school girls and would get in a habit of knocking them to the ground so he could cop feels.
What?
Right? I was like, what the hell? I tried very hard to find out how big he was at 10 because that was my little high school girls. Because if a 10-year-old boy came running at me while I was in high school, I think I'd just put my hand out and catch him in the forehead.
Right. That doesn't even make sense to me. He must have been a big boy. Maybe tall.
Yeah, but I also thought it was like what the hell with him diving on girls and feeling them up is one of those.
He ran into them with his hand up by his chest to like honk honk. That's why men think the honk of the boob is a turn on. It's not, fellers. If you're listening, honking of the titties, not a turn on.
Well, anyway, he'll also. This is serious. He also stabs. You keep fucking chuckling. Pipe down. He also stabs a classmate with a pair of compasses and burns down the neighbor's garage.
At 10?
Yes.
I didn't use a compass at 10.
Andrea. That's because he ain't the smart one of the family. Our brother probably did.
We done.
He probably used that there compass when he was 5.
And our little sister must have used it when she was 2. Everything happened when she was
2. Yeah, she ain't good with the counting.
I'm assuming they were superficial injuries because those compasses, yes, while they're sharp, they're only so big. I realize the stabbing of the classmate.
Not good.
I realize that's still bad, but he hasn't killed anyone, right?
I stapled a boy with the stapler when I was in elementary school, so I think some of it, and you know how our sister stabbed me with a piece of glass when she was just a wee one when we were in a glass shop? I think sometimes it's like was it out of anger and he just did something that seemed like a good idea at the time? But I feel like...
You stapled a boy?
He put his finger in there. I just wanted to see if the stapler would still work. It did not. He got like a little pinprick. It was like a lancing device at best. It didn't wrap around his finger. It didn't go through anything. He still cried. I got in trouble.
Oh, and your meanness score makes more sense now.
Anyway, so by the time he's 11, now, again, tried to dig into this one, but only found one article that mentioned it. Well, really 1.5, because they really weren't, like, when it came to molestation or incest, they really didn't broadcast when that shit was going on. So,
no, we scream at it from the rooftops now. They didn't do it back in the day. It was more of a hush-hush that didn't happen.
Yeah, because they didn't know how to handle it either, like the victims of it, so it was easier to pretend it never happened. So, the article I found, by the time he's 11, it said he's sexually active. But then in another article that I had found is that he struggled with the inappropriate love for his mother. And then I found another article that said he grew up with incest being an issue in his home. And I think his mother had sex with him when he was 11. I couldn't find anything that wrote it out exactly like that. But I think when we get into it and they say his main issue is he couldn't handle the inappropriate love he had for his mother. And then I think 11 is really fucking early to be sexually active. And I think that was his mother, which would also make it understandable why he's such a hostile young boy.
Well, or it's possible that she allowed the boob honking to go on. You just wanted to do a case about the mother's love. You liked my mommy dearest one. You wanted to find your own. So I wonder, like, all joking aside, I wonder if the husband was having sex with Steven, like molesting him, raping him, whatever. And that's why her number 1 husband got disappeared. And then she shot number 2 because she found out that he was diddling her son. and she went to Florida because she done heard that they released their felons early, no matter what their crime. So she's like, I'm going to go shoot him there because if I done get caught, because it doesn't make sense that she shot her second husband, doesn't go to jail. That seems a bit strange to me. So I'm wondering if maybe he didn't press charges because she shot him because she found out he was diddling her son. And then the son ends up hating his mom and having like that irrational hate.
What are you talking about? Nobody, she didn't shoot anyone.
You said she shot her second husband.
No, ma'am. I did not.
Yes, you did.
Okay. Well, okay. Not to death.
I know that. And then they got back together. So I'm wondering if maybe she shot him because she found out that he was diddling Steven. And then when she turned around and got back together with him, that would explain why Steven had an unhealthy amount of rage directed at his mother. Because if she knew that her husband was diddling him, yeah, she shot him, but then she turned around and brought him back. It would make sense. And it would lead to incest in the family. Is my thought process, is all I'm saying. You can disagree. It's just a thought.
Yeah, so you got to keep in mind, well, we haven't gotten there yet, but I don't believe that's the way that happens because I believe when she was marrying the next husband, I don't believe he was around for that side of things. I just thought it was a weird, like, you shoot your spouse and then get back together. That was more of a tidbit and less of a, he wasn't part of that section. But you're getting ahead of this story because...
I'm not ahead. You done said it.
But I'm telling you, the next little bit of a part is the situation that you'll understand why that don't make sense.
All right. Carry on.
Well, anyway, so still at 11, he would be caught peeping in the girls' locker rooms and making obscene phone calls, which I don't think the obscene phone calls is as big a deal because I think boys do weird things and obscene phone calls seems to be like a crank dial thing. So I wasn't as shocked by the obscene phone calls or the peeping.
I feel like on the whole grand scheme of things here, the knocking the girls down to inappropriately cop a feel is more of a red flag than calling somebody and hanging up.
Yeah. So his criminal...
Do you know what he was saying?
I don't know.
Do you know what he was...
It's probably
was he just heavy
this
breathing?
Is Seymour Butts. Anyway, so his criminal
start. He already started. We done started.
Well,
just because he hasn't been arrested.
He's arrested at 13 for molesting 3 girls, and
so it was no longer cute. What it was is he must have had him a baby face at 10, so nothing came of it.
Well,
and then once he was a little bit older and started getting some facial hair, they were like, yeah, so this isn't cute. This is illegal. We done told you for the last 3 years, Cletus, cut that shit out.
His name's Steven, but they opt to do the whole, so you got some issues, you're a troubled youth. He also, by the way, randomly throughout his childhood would get in trouble for underage drinking, which I also think freakishly young to be having a drinking problem. Like, I realize that we're approaching the 70s. This boy had so many problems well before we had serious victims. Anyway, he's sent to I think it was a Methodist group home thing, which he would escape from months later. Or not escape, but he'd leave without permission. Do whatever. But by May...
I think that's done called running away.
Yeah, well, by May 1970, just before his 14th birthday, Steven knocks on the door of a young housewife. She's just 23 years old. Now, she lives in his neighborhood. He's dressed as a Boy Scout and claiming to be selling cookies, which, by the way, I was like, I don't think the Boy Scouts sold cookies. I could be wrong. My history could be off, but he was dressed as a Boy Scout selling cookies.
I thought they sold candy bars.
And popcorn and other things. But I was like, but regardless, the woman turns to grab her purse when Steven barges in her home and attacks her. He plunges his pocket knife into her back over 40 times, and with such force that the blade eventually breaks.
Oh, I'm assuming she's alive still, right? Because a pocket knife's
continue.
Not very big.
I was just pausing for, like, that's a lot of rage.
Well, not only is it a lot of rage, but that's a lot of pain for her, because I would assume it's one of those teeny tiny little pocket knives that are like 2-inch blades max.
But so then he drags her to the bedroom where he rapes her. Now, the woman,
of course,
the woman grabs a hatchet off her dresser, trying to defend herself.
What? Why does she have a hatchet on her dresser?
To defend herself. Unfortunately,
how often are people breaking in that she's got a hatchet on her dresser? I don't keep hatchets on my dresser.
Well, maybe you should. Actually, don't, because your youngest.
I got lots of sleepwalkers.
Feel like the youngest. I don't know. He doesn't need a hatchet, but
maybe you and your husband should stop buying hatchets for my children. You done provide them with throwing axes and weapons of sharp natures.
You might, no ma'am, you might end up thanking us if you get robbed while you're home by yourself and there's a well-placed hatchet handy. Like this lady. Maybe
does it save her?
She's just always prepared. Shh!
Don't shush me.
Anyway, so she grabs the hatchet off her dresser to try to defend herself from the guard, who, by the way, she still has 40 holes in her fucking back. But he, unfortunately...
That's insane.
Right? But he was able to wrestle it from her and strikes her in the head.
Because she has 40 stab wounds in her back.
Right. Now, he strikes her in the head because once he gets the hatchet, she goes to try to crawl to the closet, and he whacks her in the head with the hatchet. Now, she fought so hard when he's, like, doing all this that one of her fingers is severed from her hand, and that when she went to put her hands up to protect her face,
defensive wound.
She had a fractured skull, presumably from when he hit her in the head with the hatchet. She would also have wounds on her chest, her abdomen, her legs, and back, as well as more to her head.
Is that an autopsy report, or she survives?
She did survive.
That's insane.
And
you know she's got some PTSD.
Dude, how could you not? But because she survived, she was able to identify her attacker. Now, bear in mind, this is a neighbor lady. I'm not saying they were on a first name basis with each other, but she
recognized him. Yeah.
Right.
Like, you recognize your neighbors. You might not socialize with all your neighbors, but you recognize that that's the schmuck that was getting in his car last week, and he was just in your house assaulting you. Well, I guess he's getting into his mommy's car, because isn't he a child? How old is he?
Yes.
13?
Yeah, 13, 14.
Yeah. He can't even drive.
No, but I can tell you, I would move out to the sticks, because I wouldn't trust a neighbor kid? A neighbor kid? Like,
yeah, that's insane. That's disgusting, too. Where was his mother?
And it was so violent.
Yeah.
Anyway, so when they first approached Steven, he would claim it wasn't him, but then they would start bringing up his prior acts of molesting the girls, all that. And then it would turn into, he would say he was insane.
That's not how that works.
Yeah, that's what.
Although,
sorry,
he might have a screw loose.
So I had mixed feelings about it, because I do feel like that some screws were loose and that shit needed to be addressed.
Yeah.
But he would be found guilty and sentenced to 6 months in a juvenile detention center, followed up with being sent to a mental hospital for the next 3 years.
And then what?
At the mental institution, he was diagnosed as a sexual psychopath and described as a dangerous sadist and a sociopath. Now, when he's released, he is not sent back home. He's sent into foster care with Robert and Mary Carr, who were not told of Steven's past, which, by the way, I had mixed feelings about that, because I was like, how the fuck do you send somebody who does that level of attack on someone and not tell the foster parents? But then I say mixed feelings because I feel like his foster parents, spoiler, they're very kind to him. He needed that. They were nice. He does nothing to them also, so don't get freaked out that he's going to do anything to his foster mom. But I feel like had they known about his prior acts,
they would have treated him different. Yeah.
Right. Because they also had kids of their own. So.
Oh my gosh.
But I was
you think they would have thought about that when they were placing him? Like, seeing as how this is his history, perhaps if we only let him murder a husband and wife.
Well, I had mixed feelings because maybe they wanted to place him somewhere where he had some sort of a shot at normal and got to see how a normal family was, since he clearly didn't get to have that normal. Yeah. So that's where it could have gone very bad. And they gambled with a family.
Yeah, that's super messed up. I'm glad it works out, but that's insane.
Yeah, also on that spoiling, therapy didn't work. So by the time Steven's 18, he's driving, spots a woman on the side of the highway with a disabled car. He stops to assist and then pulls a knife on the woman. Now she's able to fight him off, and he proceeds to hit her in excess of 50 times, breaking her nose, giving her a black eye, and a number of cuts and bruises.
50 times?
Yeah, he whooped her ass.
That's so much.
Stephen was convicted of aggravated assault in Chicago and was sentenced to 1 to 3 years. He serves 20 months before he's released in 1977.
He's released?
Mm-hmm. Now, personally, I was like, dude, if he would have kept... you can beat someone to death. So I feel like 20 months...
That's a lot of rage. Yeah, that's a lot of rage. 50 times... What?
And
the 70s were cruel.
Well, that and just knowing...
To victims.
Right. Right. So, bearing that in mind, I realized since he was a juvenile when he attacked the neighbor, I don't feel like they were privy to that when he attacked that lady. But how can you not factor in if they did something serious as a juvenile?
My brain can't comprehend.
So as soon as he's released, again, he's arrested again for abducting a lady out.
Is he still a minor or is he an adult?
No.
Oh, okay.
So he was 18 when he beat that lady on the side of the road.
Gotcha.
So that's his first adult conviction when he serves the 20 months. And that's where I say as soon as he's released again, he's arrested again for, this time, abducting a lady outside of a post office, again with a knife, and he forced her to drive out to the country. Now, she managed to escape by proceeding to bite and hit him while he's driving, and also clutching at the wheel, yanking it until he loses control and has to pull over. Now, she jumps out and runs for help and is later able to identify Steven.
And that's when they should have locked him up and thrown away the key. But I'm going to guess that's not what they done did.
Yeah. Now, this part baffles me because the jury couldn't unanimously agree on his guilt. What? So Steven agrees to plead guilty to a lesser charge of theft because since they couldn't, since it was a hung jury. Right, theft. I was like, theft of what? A human being?
That's called kidnapping, you dumbass jurors.
And also, because he served nearly a year in jail waiting to go to trial, he only serves 5 more. Yeah, he only serves 5 more days before he gets out.
That's disgusting. And can I just say, for all of our future potential jurors out there, since there's a chance that any of you guys can be pulled,
they're guilty!
Imagine if whatever is being done to so-and-so was to your family member. Do you think 5 additional days is sufficient enough? You think they learned their lesson? Because I'm going to say no. He's a repeat offender. Even if they don't know about his childhood, at this point, he is now a repeat offender as an adult.
Yeah. So the psychiatrist who examined him while he was in jail would label him as an extremely unstable and dangerous individual who manifested unresolved hostility towards females. Yeah, and that's where they kind of think it's because of his mom. And that's why I think she was the one diddling him. He might have liked it, but I think that's where he's got his confusion with females because his mom, it was that.
I think the menfolk were diddling him. And then she maybe started diddling him because she's like, it don't go in your hiney hole, it goes here.
I don't think he did. I think his real dad and his stepdad, I think they beat him because he was taking up all the time with his mom. And if his mom was diddling him, then they're tired of sharing.
Yeah, but she shot her second husband and then took him back. And he didn't press charges on her.
It's because he locked it.
The shooting?
You don't know. He liked something.
I'm pretty sure I know.
I'm just going to throw it out there. I don't understand the menfolk who are heavily attracted to the lunatics. But
No,
anyway, that's not about that.
Or the women that are attracted to the lunatics.
Yeah. Now, in January 1978, he would hold up a market and be immediately arrested, but he would be bonded out for $750 after sitting in jail for 3 months because he had to accumulate money. Now, he was facing
held up a market?
Yeah, I robbed it. Like, he held him up.
He's getting pretty ballsy. He's going from attacking one person to trying to rob a whole store.
Well, there's probably one person in it.
But I can tell you, I wouldn't try to rob a grocery store because you don't know who's in there. Maybe a 7-Eleven because you can contain the people, but not a grocery store.
Anyway, he was facing up to 20 years in jail for armed robbery when he's let out. Now, while out on bond, he continued his ways as normal, and that included a night out, pub crawling, marijuana smoking, and sex with at least one of his girlfriends.
He had girlfriends?
Right, girlfriends? I too stumbled on that one because I was like, what? But then I guess even Ted Bundy was able to do his murderings and also have a normal life, so...
Yeah, but he has girlfriends, multiple, plural. How does he have the stamina to rape? Does he know that his victims don't count as girlfriends? I feel like that.
Probably not. I think he was screwing club rats is probably what happened there. But apparently he also made his rounds. Now, on April 28th, 1979, mushroom hunters are walking down the side of Whitelit Creek when they come across the naked body of a young woman. Which part are you wanting? The naked body or the mushroom hunters?
The mushroom hunters?
Yeah.
Like, are we talking truffles?
I feel like the menfolk wanted a manly name, but it was specifically written in that newspaper article that they were mushroom hunters. I don't feel like they wanted to be called mushroom foragers, but I've never seen a mushroom get up and run, so it doesn't seem like it'd be much of a hunt. But regardless, that's who stumbles on the body of a young woman naked. Dead. If I didn't throw that in there, I feel like I did, but a dead body of a young woman. Anyway, naturally, like anyone would react, they run and call the police, who are there shortly. Now, when they get there, they also find the bodies of 3 small children downstream.
Oh, God.
2 boys and a girl. Now, the woman who was found first was determined to have been raped and strangled. The children had drowned. Now, at this point, they're not sure if it's from falling in the stream or being thrown in there. It's not immediately clear. Now, the police are able to identify the woman as 23-year-old Terry Chastain. Now, people later learned that Terry was a divorcee who had left her home around 7 a.m. to take her kids to the sitters before she was going to work at a department store. Now, Terry never showed up to work, and neither were her children dropped off, obviously. Now, as soon as the media hears about them being found dead, in particular, a radio show that is asking people to come forward if they saw anything or if they're driving past the area, anything abnormal. Now, details will come out of a red and silver truck that was seen near where the bodies were found. That a total of 5 people, one of which was a reserve deputy who said he saw a truck that matched that description at a construction site near that area. It was eventually traced back to Steven's foster dad. Now, he's just 22, and he's working as a construction worker for his foster dad's construction business. So the truck's obviously in his foster dad's name. So police go to their home to ask some questions when they learn that Steven is the one who's allowed to drive it. And they decide to bring him in.
And he's got a history of some raping and murdering.
Right. So that's when they're like, we want to talk to him for sure. I'm sure their spidey senses were going off because they're like, this is our fella. Now, after 7 hours of questioning, Steven confesses. Now, he's just 22 years old. To bear that all in mind, because it's so young for all the shit he's done up till this point anyway. Now, he'll tell police that he was driving alongside Terry when he decides he really wants to rape her. So he motions to get her attention, and also that there's something wrong, and points towards her tires. Now, Terry pulls over, and he stops beside her and offers his assistance. He pretends to fasten her lug nuts, They do find a flat tire in her vehicle, so I believe he did change out her tire. I don't know if maybe she had a legitimately flat tire, or if since he wields his knife all the time, that he punctured the tire and then did the whole, oh yeah, we'll change this. But regardless, he offers his assistance and then does his thing. Then he offers to look under the hood just to verify there isn't an issue with the emergency brake, to which I did a...
Wait, what?
What do you need under the hood for the emergency brake?
Yeah, that's not a thing.
I'm not a mechanic, but it doesn't seem like it works like that.
Doesn't.
Now, once the hood is popped, Steven disables the car while he's pretending to fix something that personally I don't think is broken anyway. He shuts the hood and tells her everything looks good and she can head on off. He begins to walk back to the car. I feel like he's smirking, the piece of shit son bitch. But
yeah,
she tries to start the car. It won't start, so she yells out for him. And still playing the hero, he walks on back and is just like, oh no. How about you all pile into my car and I'll take you where you need to go?
I don't mean to victim shame at all. So please don't get your panties in a wad here.
I can't promise I won't.
If there was nothing wrong with her engine and her vehicle was driving correctly, even if she did have a flat tire, okay, he shouldn't have gone under the hood. And the second he did, and that stopped her vehicle from working, she should not have flagged down the gentleman who's not so much of a gentleman because he's the one that just done broke the shit. Let's just say he didn't have ulterior motives. He obviously is not mechanically inclined because he just fucked the shit up that wasn't broken in the first place. You don't wave him to come back over.
So the way I figured it is, I'll throw this out there, she was driving her boyfriend's car. So I figured maybe it had a history of having issues, so she didn't know what was, if there was something legitimately wrong with the car. And I feel like I've been in those situations before where it's one problem then the next. So maybe if this isn't the first time the car has died, obviously the first time it's been sabotaged, but I was calculating that also we're in the 70s, so she probably doesn't know. She's just trusting the manly feller that...
Well, she's not very old either. She's a baby in life also.
Well, so he was nice enough to pull over and he is setting her up and leading a crumb trail kind of thing. So, and you've never been in one of those situations where, I don't know, where somebody's just, you don't have a reason to be like, yeah, no. And I feel like since he's clearly a manipulator, she's not in a situation, she's trying to get to work, she's trying to drop her kids off, and I could see it be like, okay, you need me to pop the hood? She just pops it because she doesn't know any better.
Yeah, it's sad.
It is, because it's...
Because of how everything plays out, yeah.
Yeah. So he'll say that instead of driving the family where they needed to go, he drives out to White Lick Creek, walked them into the woods, and would tell the children to go play by the water. Now, a witness on the highway said he saw the vehicle that was driving erratically, and he saw a woman flailing and grabbing at the wheel, but he assumed it was a family dispute and paid no further attention. Which I wanted to scream, because what kind of dumbass comes forward to say that shit? And also, even if it's a family dispute, they're putting everyone else in danger by doing the wheel grabbing. And I do know of a few females that will grab steering wheels. That's not okay.
Yeah, that's not okay at all. Especially if he could see there were kids in the car too.
Right.
I mean, there's so many lives that are being put at risk. You don't just leave it.
No, and even if he would have called 911 to be like, hey, I think there's a family dispute going on. However, they're on the highway yanking the wheel all over the place, and I think somebody needs to go check it out. And whether the police were able to get out there fast enough it would have gone from there, but...
See something, say something.
Right. That's exactly... Things would have changed. Although he probably wouldn't have gone to jail for very long.
Probably not.
Now they're in the woods, right? He then rips off Terry's clothes with incredible force. Her garments were torn to shreds. Her bra hooks were bent straight, which I didn't even know was a thing.
Yeah, I didn't know those could be straightened. I know they can get smushed and then not clip properly, but I didn't know that they could be straightened.
Yeah, apparently if you yank that thing, those hooks straighten out. Now, he uses the shreds of her clothing to tie her hands and then her feet. and then proceeds to rape Terry. Now, naturally, she's crying and making all sorts of noise, which make her children come running. Now, Steven takes one of the long pieces of clothing and uses it as a gag, tying it around her head. As soon as the children start to get closer, he wraps another piece of her clothing around her throat and strangles Terry to death with her children watching.
Oh my gosh. How old are the kids again? How old's the oldest?
I haven't told you yet. The children watched also as he picked up her lifeless body and threw her in the creek. He then picked up 5-year-old Misty, 4-year-old Mark, and 2-year-old Steven and threw them into the creek, into the icy water where they drowned.
That's so sad. How did he get them out into the water far enough to make them drown?
I figured if you've ever been out in the sticks, there's parts where it's like it just drops off and it's really deep rather than you can walk up to as a beach level. There's parts where it just drops off and it's real deep. I also figured, now I don't think the 2-year-old had any chance, 4-year-old probably not much either, but even if the 5-year-old could cling on to the banks or even the roots or anything, none of this was quick. I imagine even if they were to hold on to anything, the water is so cold that would have got them either way, but
you make me want to cry. That's so sad. Are you sure that he didn't hold their heads underwater?
He said he just threw them in there. And I don't feel like
he must have been pretty deep.
Yeah. Because I feel like if he wouldn't have just chunked them in there, the littler ones probably would run off. And maybe. I feel like they probably were so frozen in fear because they don't understand what they're watching. But he throws her car keys into the water. Now, the children's father is in the Navy and was stationed in California when he gets the news of the murder of his children. Now, the couple had been divorced barely 2 years, but I was like, I can't even imagine getting that phone call. I don't know what happens with him, but I can't imagine being told that your children were chunked into.
Shattered his soul is what it is. He obviously wasn't getting to see them very frequently. So to find out that your babies have been murdered and the way they were murdered, that makes me sick for him.
I don't know if I would have preferred him breaking their necks or anything, because being thrown into icy water to slowly drown, the fear, he's such a disgusting human being. Yeah. Now, Steven will go on trial February 2nd, 1980, and is found guilty on February 25th. He would try to blame his natural parents for rearing him wrong, and he would also blame the justice system for failing to steer him in the right direction when they had so many chances to do so. And I was like...
I'm going to say that he was definitely reared by one of his pals, if not both. He's blaming them for rearing him wrong.
He was also reared in the criminal justice system.
That's what it is. I done figured it out.
He would admit to forensics psychologists that he had committed over 200 burglaries and 20 armed robberies and had sex with over 75 women, 20 of them by force, and even admitted to having sex with girlfriends on the same days he committed his rapes.
That's disgusting.
It is disgusting. Now, he does address the jury of 9 men and 3 women, saying, "You'd better put me to death because next time it might be one of you or your daughters."
He's sick.
Yeah.
You know what it is? I think he's sabotaging the conviction on purpose because he seems like a control freak. And I bet in his little pea brain of his that he was like, if I tell them to put me in jail forever and they do it, then it's because I told them to, versus him saying, I didn't done do it. And then they put him in jail forever and he's kicking his feet like, well, darn, they didn't done believe me. Does that make sense? He's trying to control the narrative of his story. Yeah.
Now, the jury was more than happy to grant his request and they sentenced him to death.
Thank goodness.
Steven was executed in Indiana's electric chair on March 8th, 1981, at just 24 years old. His last meal was prime rib, lobster tail, potatoes with sour cream, chef salad with French dressing, and a dinner roll. He did ask for 4 cans. He did ask for 4 cans of beer, but that was denied.
I could do without the beer. I'm not a huge fan of beer, but throw in a couple margaritas. I could have me some dinner with him. That sounds pretty good. As long as I don't have to cook it or clean it.
There might be your rape-in afterwards.
I feel like he's going to be too full from eating. That's one hell of a meal.
Yeah, he did do a good pick. I mean, there was that one lady who her last meal was cheese doodles.
The Cheetos, yeah.
Anyway,
disgusting. She went to death with orange fingers. I guarantee it. Wiping the cheese crumbs off her chest. Don't mind those here. No.
Steven was the first person executed since 1961. Now, the week before his execution, Steven would go on to confess to his foster mother, Mary, that he had raped and murdered multiple women in different states, and he couldn't remember them all, nor could he remember their names. But he would say that the first person he murdered was in 1973. It was actually 2 women in 1973 in Louisiana when he was living in New Orleans. He then went on.
Has that ever been like checked out? Like, are there 2 women? I realize there's
70s.
Missing women and Jane.
It's the 70s in Louisiana and New Orleans. I feel like there were a lot of bodies, so to try to figure out which one, no, I don't feel like they'll know. Because that's if the bodies were found, and he didn't know names, so, or a general narrow it down for us. But sometime in 73, 2 people, yeah, he probably did do it.
Sick. I couldn't imagine being his foster mom and having him sit there and confess that. And it's like, good for her for showing up and continuing to be there for him, because I feel like that he needed some sort of support in his life earlier on. So at least she was there, because I do feel sorry for him. I feel sorry for all these murderers that were raised in such a rough fashion that it shapes them. Like, I feel sorry for their child version of them, not the adult, the child. No. Because once you're an adult, I fully agree. I'll help. You want me to do it? I'll do it. But I feel sorry for the child version of them. Does that make sense? Like,
I can sympathize because I feel bad for those real hostile, angry dogs, but I still say put them down. Too bad somebody didn't raise that puppy right.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I hate to say it like this, but damaged goods are damaged goods. I give credit to his foster mother for trying to show him love and support that he lacked. Yeah, that he lacked in his life earlier on that possibly could have shaped him to be a better person.
And
it's a shame.
She knew not to help break him out. Unlike some other mother figures out there.
Some other mothers out there, yeah.
Listen to our previous cases. But so then he goes on to kill a dance instructor in November 1978 in Indianapolis. He said he tossed her into a swamp, and he's not really sure if she's dead or if she survived. He just knows he chunked her in there and doesn't know what happened with that. Then he would go back to Indianapolis, where he'd raped 2 different women, and they never came forward because he never heard anything back on that. He left one victim tied to a tree in the woods, and he wasn't sure if she died out there because he never heard about anybody being found out in the woods either.
Well, I feel like depending on how heavily wooded it is, they might not find a body.
Right.
Like, how far into the woods did he go? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now, this information was never confirmed, but it is believed there are more victims out there. Now, Steven would use the same pattern that he did with Terry and offer to help his victims before he would rape them and then strangle them and use what items that were available to strangle them with before dumping their bodies in an isolated area.
That's sick.
I
find all those killers that use, like,
they're helping
the goodness of other people against them.
Right.
It's just extra sick and twisted.
Or killing the people who are willing to help them in response. Like, I need help. And then, hiya!
They do it how?
I don't know why you
How's
laughed.
How's it go?
I was serious. With the people. Because even Ted Bundy with the when he would gimp it, or he had a hiya!
There you go. Yeah. All right.
But it's just.
That's what I was laughing at. Keep your head on a
swivel is what I say, and your eyeballs peeled because there are people masquerading around as heroes, and sometimes they ain't the heroes. I was trying to think of what that one story was with the bird and the cow. It's real, real cold. Do you know what I'm talking about? and the bird falls off the tree branch, and the cow comes along and shits on it. But the turd pile is so warm that the bird starts to thaw and is nice and warm. And then a cat comes along and scrapes the poop off and gets the bird out of the shit and then eats the bird. And the bird was at first real thankful for the cat to help him out of that giant cow patty. But the moral is, whoever gets you into shit is not necessarily your enemy, but who gets you out of it is also not necessarily your friend.
That's an interesting story.
And I also think less of that cat because it ate a turd-covered bird. Not that the story actually happened, but I'm just saying, people who get you out of situations, not necessarily your friends. So be vigilant. Keep your hatchets at the ready.
Jeez. Make sure they're...
I'm getting also, I feel like here, and you're laughing.
Because it's stupid. Yeah, people that are going to just be walking around with their freaking hatchets. Make sure they're sharp at least, because I feel like that hatchet... No? If that hatchet was sharper, perhaps her whacks at him would have deterred him.
Deterred him? He ain't a shrimp.
He did do the rear end.
You're disgusting. That's all I've got on this one. I stand by it again. Be vigilant. Don't accept help from strangers.
Well, I feel like we're in a different time period now where...
No, we ain't!
The 70s, 70s and 80s, even the early 90s, if you were stranded on the side of the road, you couldn't just whip out a cell phone or push a button in your car for...
Right. So that's where situations would be different now. You'd be able to call somebody for help or that OnStar nonsense, that level of things. But there's also the times when your cell phone dies and being stranded on the side of the road. Have a plan. Have a plan is what
Get a car charger. Who doesn't own a car charger anymore?
Who doesn't have a hatchet on their nightstand?
I sure freaking don't.
Well, you're going to be a victim. All right.
Yeah, have you a good week, everybody. If you're bored and want some more of us, listen to some of our other cases. See if you can find them Easter eggs that we leave there for all the other cases that we've done, diddly done.
And you can Netflix some...
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Homicide Hobbies. If we made you laugh, if we made you cry, or if we mind-fucked you for the day, then we thank you for listening. Please write a review on whatever you're listening to us on. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers. We're freaking awesome. And join us next week for another episode of Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy.
And I'm Claire.
That's all we've got.